Hey guys, a very good morning, and thank you all for joining today's session. I welcome you all to the fourth masterclass session this year. And to begin with, I hope you're able to see my screen as well. And if you have any questions for us, you can please leave them in the Q&A panel. And we'll also have a live Q&A session once after the presentation. So I'll also be able to answer any questions that you might have. And the recording of this session will be sent to all the attendees in a couple of days. So kindly be patient and you should be receiving the recordings via your emails soon after. So if you have any feedback or any queries for us on the functionalities of the PAM sort of solutions, you can always drop us an email at hello-pam360 at manageengine.com, and we'll be happy to have those questions answered for you. So I'll start with a little introduction to the masterclass series that we're hosting from ManageEngine. So the PAM Masterclass training series is an exclusive training series where we help all our customers understand our product in depth, learn how you can use PAM to address your everyday use cases and challenges as well. So my name is John. I'm one of the technical consultants here at ManageEngine, and I will be the one presenting this masterclass on privileged session management today. So in this exclusive masterclass so far, we've looked at modules such as privileged account onboarding, which is onboarding all your user accounts as well as all your sensitive privileged accounts in your environments, and how you can perform a remote passive resets on any of those sensitive accounts. And we've also had a session in the previous months on privilege elevation and delegation management as well. So in today's session, we're going to look at the security risks associated with privileged sessions, the benefits of using a privileged session management tool, and how best does ManageEngine help in this regard. Well, before we get started on all the modules with privileged session management, I would just like to take a moment to look into the benefits of using a privileged session management tool. So primarily, a privileged session management tool allows any IT head or any IT administrator to have centralized control over all the critical systems located anywhere in the globe. And it can also provide granular access to IT users and define the means by which they can gain access to these critical systems as well. You can also create workflow mechanisms to provision and deprovision access, and you can have a complete accountability for any privileged access within your environment. You could also allow access to third-party vendors or contractors to critical systems or specific applications without having to reveal any sort of sensitive credentials with them. You can also prevent the exposure of the entire network. So as a PAM, as a PSM tool is going to act as a proxy gateway channel to tunnel any connection from the user device to the target system. So you can essentially limit pathways to access the corporate systems as well. And apart from this, we also help organizations meet various compliance standards such as SOX, HIPAA, ISO, PCI DSS, and many more. So privileged session management can be achieved through ManageEngine's Access Manager Plus, Password Manager Pro, as well as the Privileged Access Management Suite, which is PAM 360. So these are some of the modules that are offered within session management. So just to have a look at a few, you can see we have one-click secure remote sessions. So if you'd like to establish, one-click remote connections, it might be an RDP, SSH, SQL, or even VNC connections. You can do so without having to reveal any sort of sensitive credentials with any of the technicians or end users within your organization. We also have options to collaborate for administrators to collaborate with the technicians. They can shadow monitor what the end user is currently doing during those sessions, and they can also terminate sessions if required. So we'll take we'll take these models one at a time, and I'll be able to show you just how PAM 360 can be used to accomplish all these modules within your environment. So please do allow me to go ahead and share my demo instance with you. So here we go. As you see, I'm going to currently do this demonstration using ManageEngine's PAM 360, which is our complete privileged access management suite. And I've also done quite a few configurations within this tool already. So for instance, I've already created a few users within PAM 360. And as you might be aware, we do have different roles within the tool as well. We have administrator roles and as well as normal standard user roles within the tool. So I've already created two accounts within PAM 360. I have an admin account, which has administrator privileges, and also a guest account, which is going to be a normal account that is going to be used on this demo. And apart from this, I have also onboarded some of my resources, or in other words, some of the devices, critical devices within my environment as well. So I have a few Linux devices as well as Windows devices onboarded here. And again, if you'd like to know how to go about onboarding them, you can either do them manually. You can supply all the necessary information here, like the resource name, the IP address, or the host name of your resource, along with the sensitive credentials, and you can have them onboarded either manually or we have discovery options that you can go with as well. So we can provide both perform both Windows discovery as well as Linux discovery and fetch all these assets automatically from your environment. So once these accounts have been fetched or added into PAM 360, now we can begin providing access to these assets out with your technicians or normal users in your organization. So to do so, what you can do is you just need to uh, locate the resource that you would like to share with your users. So in my case, I'm going to go with my domain controller. So let's take this as an example. So this is a Windows asset that I'd like to share with one of my users. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the resource actions button here and share this particular resource with the user guest. And currently, I'm going to provide this guest user with a view password privilege, which will not allow this particular user to make any modifications to the password, but it'll simply allow that particular user to have access to that particular account within my environment. If required, the user can also establish one-click remote connections using that account through this tool. So to go ahead, I will open up another tab here and log in into PAM 360 as the standard user guest. So once I do log in, how an end user interface is going to look like. And once again, once the user has logged into the interface, he will be able to see all the resources that has been shared with them by the admins of this tool. So for instance, the CAM DC server that I just shared with this user is currently visible on his console. So if the end user would like to establish a remote connection to this particular asset, he can do so from here. All he needs to do is simply click on the resource that he wishes to establish the remote connection to. And next to any particular account within the resource, he's going to get this open connection button, using which the user will be able to automatically launch this session on a fresh tab. And PAM 360, on the other hand, is going to autofill the credentials for the user. So it's going to autofill the username and password fields and automatically log in the user into that target system without the user having to supply any credentials manually. And as you can see here, the password will also be hashed out. It'll also be masked from the user. The technician will not be able to see this password in plain text. Although, if you'd like to share the passwords in plain text, we do have an option to reveal these credentials as well, which will be the default option. However, that would not be the best practice. So, for preventing any sort of external access to your infrastructure, you can easily mask these passwords using the tool and simply grant them access using PAM 360. So when a technician wants to open a remote connection, they simply need to click on this open connection button and select the type of connection that they wish to establish to this particular device. Since this is a Windows machine, I'm going to go with the Windows Remote Desktop option. So once I select that option, as you can see, PAM would launch the session on a fresh tab, autofill the credentials, and automatically log in the user into that system as well. And from here, the user can perform whatever activity that needs to be carried out on this particular server. And in case if the user would like to perform any file transfer, that is, if the user would like to move files from his local PC to this target server or from the target server to the local PC, that can also be done within the remote session. So within the remote session, the user will be getting this folder icon using which a file transfer can be performed both to and fro from the target system to the user PC, as well as from the user PC to the target system as well. And the similar scenario applies for any SSH based sessions through this tool as well. So if you happen to have any Linux machines or any network devices, and you would like to launch SSH based sessions through these devices, you can do so using PAM 360 as well. Similarly, what you need to do is I have a Linux resource already shared with this particular user. As you can see, it's called DMP Send 7 machine, and it's a Linux based resource. So if I go ahead and click on this particular resource now, I'll get all the accounts listed within the resource as well. And next to any particular account, I can simply click on this open connection button and launch an SSH based connection as well, which will be emulated on the browser, such as this. And what if if you have a scenario where you don't have a direct connectivity to the target system? So let's say the target system it's placed securely within a DMZ, or if it's placed beyond a firewall device, and PAM in this case might not have direct connectivity to reach that particular server. In that case, you can very well have a landing server configured within PAM 360 as well. So instead of directly establishing connections from the PAM server to the target system, PAM server will first establish a remote connection to the jump server, or in other words, a landing server that is placed in between the PAM server and the target system. And from the landing server, a connection will be established to the target system. And all this will be completely done in a transparent manner, in the sense that technician or a user will not have to enter any credentials manually at any point of this connection taking place. And to configure this landing server, it's quite straightforward. So from the administrator login, I'll jump back here. I can simply go to the admin tab, and under connections, I'm going to have landing servers. So to add a landing server, you just need to click on this add landing server option. Provide a name for this landing server configuration. So such as this landing server 2. And then I can also select the primary and the secondary landing servers here, along with the accounts that I'm going to use to connect to those landing servers. So once I have my primary and, if required, a secondary landing server configured within this page, I can simply go ahead and associate this landing server with the target system that I'd like to connect to. I can simply associate this with any of my target systems listed here. And once after I do that, let me go ahead and do this for the DMP Send 7 machine here. So I'm going to go ahead and associate this. Landing server has been associated successfully with the DMP Send 7 machine. So right now, if I go ahead into the resources tab and launch a remote connection to the DMP Send 7 machine, the remote connection will be first launched to the jump server. From PAM 360, it's going to be launched to the jump server. And from the jump server, the connection will be made to this target system. So let's witness that in action here. So once I do uh, open a connection here, there we go. So I'm currently logged in to this particular Linux machine through jump server. The most important aspect of any of this would be the auditing functionality of this tool here. So if I go back to the audit tab within PAM 360, I'll be getting a complete overview of all the operations taking place within the tool. So if somebody retrieves a password from this tool, or if somebody establishes a remote connection, everything will be logged here within the audit tab of the tool. But apart from this, we also have recording functionalities. So we do record all the SSH and RDP or even SQL connections that take place through PAM 360. And if at any point, if you need to play back a session and review what a particular user has done, you can always do that. You can simply click on this play button here and watch a video playback of the entire instance, which should give you answers to all your forensic questions as well. And in case of an SSH session, such as this one, similarly, you're going to have complete audit logs of this as well. And for the very last session that we established through jump server, you can see uh, PAM initiated the connection firstly to the PAM Win10 machine, which is a jump server. And from the jump server, a connection was again established to this target machine, which is PMP-Send7. And you can also see all the operations carried out within that session as well. And in case if you need to provide access to your technicians in a more timely manner, you can also do that through our access control workflow. So if you don't want to, say, provide access to your technicians on a permanent basis, maybe you want to want them to have access on a more timely manner, maybe for the next 30 minutes or for an hour or tomorrow from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. to carry out a certain maintenance activity, you can easily have that configured within the tool as well. And as part of this access control mechanism, we also offer the option to rotate passwords after exclusive use. So if I go to the miscellaneous settings here under the access control configuration, I have an option here that says reset password key after exclusive use. So if you have granted access to a particular server out with an user, and after the user terminates the session, or after the time frame that you have provided to the user is exhausted, PAM 360 will automatically terminate the session for the user. Basically, it'll kick the user out of the session, and it will also carry out a password rotation on that target account. So even if the user tries to, make use of that account at a later point of time to gain access to your servers, he'll not be able to do that because the password would be rotated after every single use by the tool. And once again, the session recording functionalities here can be completely configured by you. So if you get to choose which sessions you would like to record using PAM 360. So if you only want to record RDP sessions and you don't want to record SSH sessions, you can disable those recordings as well. You could also state the path where you'd like all these recordings to be stored by PAM 360 as well. So if you'd like to point this to be stored at an external location, maybe if you don't want to bombard the PAM server, so you'd like to store this at an external location away from the PAM server, you can feel free to do so as well. And you can also set up a backup directory. So the recordings will be stored at both the locations. So in case even if you lose one, you will still have access to the other. And you will also have an option to purge recordings as well. So if you don't want to keep recordings that are older than a certain number of days, maybe if they're older than 30 days, you want to automatically get rid of them, then PAM 360 can do that for you as well. So what we saw so far, these were the session management functionalities here. So how you would be able to, uh, open remote connections with the tool. Give me one moment. And how you can collaborate or terminate the session as well. And how you can have real-time auditing capabilities with the tool. And also how all these sessions will be recorded using PAM 360. And we also had a look at the landing server configuration as well. How you can grant access to devices that are lying beyond a DMC or a firewall device. Apart from this, if you'd like to provide access to certain installed applications on your servers. Because when you normally provide, let's say, an RDP connection, the user will be able to, have access to the entire server, and they can carry out whatever activities they need to do on that server. But what if you only need to provide access to one particular application installed on the server? Then this can be accomplished with the use of our remote app feature. So with the remote app configured, you no longer have to provide access to the entire server. Instead, you can publish certain applications on the target system, and only those applications will be accessible to a user when the user establishes an RDP connection to that particular machine. And to configure this remote app, it's quite straightforward. The first step would be to publish these applications on the target system. But once you have them published on the server, you can simply go to the admin tab, and under connections, you can click on remote app. And from the remote app section, you can simply discover all the remote apps present or published on a server. You simply need to select the server here and also select a privileged account using which we can log into that server and fetch these published applications. And once you click on the fetch button, we should be getting the list of all the applications that are published on this particular machine, the CAM DC machine. So once these applications have been fetched into the tool, now you can associate them with the respective resources configured within PAM 360. And then you can share these particular point applications with your users so that they can gain access to them. So in my case, we have already, associated this particular application with these three resources. So if I go back to the resource tab here, I can simply share a particular point application with my users now. So let me look for that server, which is CAMDC. And from here, I can simply click on resource actions, share with users. And here, instead of providing the user with a view password privilege, I'm going to provide them with a remote app only access. And I can also select the particular remote app I want the user to have access to. In my case, I'm going to go with the Firefox browser. So once I have this saved and I've granted access to the guest user, so I can now go back into the guest login. From the guest login, if I happen to click on the open connection button now, I'll not be able to take remote connections. I'll not be able to take RDP connections to the entire server anymore. Instead, I'll only have access to this particular point application that is configured on that server. So if the user clicks on this button, a connection will be established on a fresh tab. An RDP connection will be established. And within the RDP connection, the user will only have access to the Firefox browser and nothing else. The user cannot navigate anywhere else within this application. And once again, this session is also going to be recorded. But apart from the recording, you will also have real-time monitoring functionalities as well. So if I go back to the admin login here and go to the audit tab, and within the audit tab, I'm going to have a active privilege sessions tab here, which will give me an overview of all the active sessions within my environment currently. So from here, I can see that the guest user is currently making use of the CAM DC server using this user one account. So if I want to monitor what the guest user is currently doing, I can simply click on this join button and watch the session in real time from here. So I can see exactly what that guest user is currently doing on that server. And if I happen to see the guest user doing some kind of suspicious operations on that server, then straight away I can go ahead and terminate his login from here, which is going to kick the user out of that session and terminate the session as well. There you go. So the user will be terminated from the session. Apart from this, apart from the file transfer that you saw earlier, which can be performed within an RDP session. So if you happen to have two target resources in your environment and you want to transfer files between these two different servers that is located within your environment, you can also do so within PAM 360. And how you can do that is within the connections tab, you're going to have an option to do a secure file transfer. And the secure file transfer is going to make use of SFTP to perform this file transfer here. So from here, I can simply select on a source machine. So in my case, let me go with one of the machines here. I'll go with this Win10 machine, which is a Windows machine, of course. And I'm also going to select an account using which this file transfer will take place. And similarly, I'll also configure a destination machine as well. So here, let me go with a Linux machine then. So DMP Send 7, which is a Linux machine. I can also select the respective account for this machine. And once the connection has been established, I'll be able to directly perform file transfers between two different machines without having to log into them. And the file transfer done within PAM 360 is going to be caught within the audits as well. So you'll have a complete overview on those operations as well. So far we saw how you can, open RDP connections, SSH connections, and how you can perform file transfers for both Windows and as well as for Linux environments. But what if you have some sort of internal websites? Maybe you have a router configuration page, a web-based GUI, where you'd like to perform router configurations. And these are going to be internal websites in your organization. So users will not be able to simply log into these websites through any browser or through any machine. So these are going to be highly secure websites, and the connections to these websites can only be made from dedicated endpoints within your environment. Then this is where the HTTPS proxy gateway function with PAM 360 comes into play. So with the proxy gateway server, you can have PAM 360 proxy these websites for you. So instead of the websites being established from the end users' laptops or desktops, instead they're going to be tunneled and proxied through the PAM server. So all you need to configure this is go to the admin tab. Under configuration, you'll have the HTTPS gateway server feature. And you just need to enable this toggle button and also set the port required for this proxy feature to work. By default, it's set to 8285, but you can customize this port as per your liking. And you can also, install the certificates required here to perform the handshake as well. Once you do the configuration, you can simply add a URL to any resource that you currently have. So let me go with the same CAM server here. So within the CAM server, I can just click on resource actions, edit resource, and I can configure a resource URL for this particular server. And in my case, I've set up the PAM URL as my target URL here. And as you can see, PAM is currently running on the default port, that is 8282. So if I now want to open a remote connection to this particular website, internal website, then I can do so from this tool. And this is going to be proxied from the PAM server. So I'll show this to you in action here. So if I simply click on this remote connection option and select open HTTPS gateway connection, then this connection will be launched from the PAM server. And as you can see here, the port is no longer 8282, but instead the connection has been launched from the 8285 port on the PAM server. So this way you'll be able to tunnel internal websites in a secure manner. Apart from this, for your SSH connections, if you'd like to provide command controls over the sessions, you can have those configured as well. So typically when you open remote connections, that is SSH based connections from PAM 360, the user will be given full access to the entire server. So let me show that to you once again here. We just remove this landing server configuration. Once I do this, and if I open a connection to one of my Linux instances here, see the user has full access to this terminal. So he can execute whatever queries that he'd like to do on this particular session. But in case if you'd like to control this, if you don't want to provide full access to your SSH sessions, instead you want to only allow users to run particular commands, pre-configured commands within the session, then you can do so with the command control feature with PAM 360. So to get this activated, it's pretty straightforward as well. So all you need to do is go to this admin tab, and from the admin tab under privilege elevation, you're going to have the manage commands option here. So if you click on that, you will be able to add all the commands within this tool. We have a few commands already added here as well by default out of the box, but you can very well add your own commands here. You can also create command groups out of these. And once you have these command groups created, you can associate them with certain resources or certain accounts within the environment. And if anybody establishes a remote connection to those particular assets or using those particular accounts where command control is configured, they'll only be able to run these whitelisted commands. They'll not be able to make any manual inputs within those sessions. So I'll show it to you in action here. So I'll go back to my resources tab. And for this DMP-send7 machine, let me go ahead and configure this command control. So I'll just click on configure sh command control here. Once I do, I can also specify the allowed commands for this particular resource in my organization. Let's say I only want this user to perform basic file system operations as well as basic administration on this particular server. So once I have this associated, now if an user opens a remote connection to this particular server, let's go ahead and do that first. You would see the user will not be able to make any manual inputs within the session. Instead, what they'll be allowed to do is they can simply click on this icon on the top right corner of the SSH window, which will list down all the allowed commands or all the listed commands that the user is allowed to execute within the session. So if the user wants to execute the ls command, he can simply click on this execute button, which will run that command on the session. So no manual inputs can be made by the user. Apart from this, when it comes to launching remote connections, through the browser is not the only option that you have to launch remote connections. So obviously, when you launch the connections through the web browser, it's going to be tunneled through the PAM server to the target system. But what if you happen to have some power users within your organization, and you would like these power users to have direct connectivity to the target systems, and maybe making use of the native MSTC tool or even the PuTTY application to establish SSH connections? Then in such a case, you can go with the thick client for PAM 360, which is a Remote Connect, which is a Windows application, which is going to come bundled with the native MSTC as well as PuTTY built into it. So for instance, if I go ahead and log in to this Remote Connect application now, I'll log in as an administrator. This user does not have rights on this to access the Remote Connect application. So you can prevent or allow access to this application as desired for your individual users. So if you'd only like the power users to have access to this application, you can configure that same within the tool as well. So once logged in, all the connections will be listed here. So once again, the passwords cannot be viewed from this particular application, but the user will only be able to be allowed to establish direct remote connections from this particular application here. Right. So we have had a look at most of these session management functionalities here. So let's have a quick recap on what we've seen so far. So we have seen how we can launch remote sessions via PAM 360, whether this be RDP, SSH, SQL, or even VNC based connections can be launched using this application without having to manually input any credentials by the users. We can also have landing servers or jump servers configured within the tool. So if you happen to have a server lying beyond a firewall or a DMZ, instead of establishing direct remote connections from the PAM server to the target system, you can always rely on a jump server that will fall between the PAM server and the target system. And every time you establish a remote connection, PAM will first make a connection to the jump server. And from the jump server, a connection will be made to the target system in a completely transparent manner. And we will also have an option to monitor, record, and playback sessions within this tool as well. If required, administrators can join the end user sessions in real time and monitor all these activities within the session as well. We can also perform bidirectional file transfers both during RDP sessions as well as outside the sessions. So if you'd like to perform an SFTP based file transfer, even between cross platforms, like between a Windows server and a Linux server, you can do so with the help of the bidirectional file transfer feature. And we also had a look at the thick client, which is Remote Connect, using which you will be able to open direct remote connections to any of your Windows devices or Linux devices or even network devices. So you can launch both RDP and SSH based connections using the thick client. And we also saw how you can open connections to particular point applications running within a server. And we also saw how we can proxy website connections using PAM 360 as well. So with this said, we have covered most of the session management functionalities with PAM 360. So from here, we'll be moving on to the next part of the session, which would be the live Q&A. So if you have any questions for us, please do feel free to drop it on the Q&A panel on your left side, and we'll be happy to have those questions answered for you. Once again, if you have any further questions in the future, you can also drop us an email at hello-pam360@manageengine.com, and we'll be happy to have them answered for you as well. So I take it that we do not have any questions so far. So once again, we reached the end of today's webinar, and I hope the session was useful in learning more about privileged session management. And we hope to see you in our next masterclass, which is about leveraging PAM 360's contextual integrations with other IT management applications, such as RPA tools, ticketing systems, DevOps platforms, and many more. And once again, feel free to reach out to us over email if you have any doubts or if you have any other queries answered. You can always reach out to us on our emails, and we'll all be always available to help you with that. And with that said, I want to thank you all once again for taking your time to attend the session today. And we hope to see you all next time on the upcoming masterclass sessions. Until then, I'm signing off, and thank you very much once again. Have a great day ahead. Bye for now. Cheers.